They laughed at me for being a single mom. Until this. Asterisk, have you ever felt like the whole world was against you? Like no matter how hard you tried, people just couldn't see past their judgments. That was my life for years, until everything changed in a way I never could have imagined. If my story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey, because trust me, what happened next might just give you the hope you've been searching for. Asterisk. The first time I noticed the whispers was at Parker's kindergarten orientation. I stood alone among a sea of couples, clutching my son's small hand while he fidgeted with the buttons on his new shirt. The other parents huddled together in their perfect family units, stealing glances my way when they thought I wasn't looking. Their eyes held a mixture of pity and judgment that I'd grown accustomed to over the past 5 years. "That's her," I heard someone whisper. "The one whose husband left when she was 7 months pregnant." It wasn't entirely accurate. Mark had actually left when I was 8 months pregnant, after announcing that fatherhood wasn't part of his 5-year plan. The distinction hardly mattered now. Parker tugged at my hand. "Mommy, why is everyone looking at us?" I knelt down, straightening his collar. "Because you're the handsomest boy in the room," I whispered, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. That night, after tucking Parker into bed with his favorite dinosaur nightlight casting prehistoric shadows across his ceiling, I collapsed onto my couch and finally let the tears come. I was exhausted, not just from working 2 jobs while raising a child alone, but from the constant battle against other people's perceptions. The neighbors who offered unsolicited advice about finding a father figure. The potential employers who questioned my reliability. The dates who vanished after learning I had a child. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "How was orientation?" I typed back, "Fine." Parker made a friend. What I didn't tell her was how the PTA president had pointedly asked if I'd have time to volunteer, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. Or how the teacher had asked about Parker's father 3 separate times, despite the family information form clearly stating single-parent household. I scrolled mindlessly through social media, pausing at a post from my college roommate showing her perfect family vacation in Hawaii. Her husband, her 2 children, their matching outfits on the beach. I remembered when we used to stay up late planning our futures together. Neither of us had planned for this divergence. The next morning, I woke before my alarm to prepare Parker's favorite breakfast, dinosaur-shaped pancakes with blueberry eyes. It was our special tradition for important days, and his first full day of kindergarten certainly qualified. "Are you excited for school?" I asked, watching him meticulously arrange his pancake dinosaurs in what he called a chronological timeline. "Yes," he said, then paused. "But Tommy said kids without dads are weird." My heart sank. "Tommy doesn't know what he's talking about," I said, keeping my voice light. "Families come in all different shapes and sizes. Some have moms and dads, some have 2 moms or 2 dads, and some, like ours, have one super mom who loves her kid more than anything in the whole wide world." Parker seemed to consider this. "Do you love me more than a T-Rex loves meat?" I laughed, grateful for his 5-year-old logic. "Way more than that." "That's a lot," he said seriously, before devouring his Triceratops pancake. After dropping Parker at school, I rushed to my morning shift at the coffee shop. Between taking orders and making lattes, I checked my email for responses to the job applications I'd sent out the previous week. I had a business degree gathering dust while I worked minimum wage jobs with flexible hours that allowed me to be there for Parker. "Another double shift?" my manager asked as I tied my apron. "Bills don't pay themselves," I replied with a shrug. "You know, my sister's husband works at that marketing firm downtown." I could put in a word. "Thanks, but I've applied there 3 times. They're looking for someone with recent experience." I didn't add that the last interviewer had frowned when I mentioned being a single parent, asking pointed questions about my childcare situation. By the time I picked up Parker from after-school care, my feet were throbbing and my smile was wearing thin. But I brightened when I saw him running toward me, a paper clutched in his hand. "Mommy. I drew our family." He thrust the paper at me proudly. It showed two stick figures, one tall with long brown hair, one small with a dinosaur t-shirt, standing beside what appeared to be our apartment building. Above us, he'd drawn a massive sun with a smiling face. "It's beautiful," I said, blinking back tears. "Is that us?" "Yep. And that's our house, and that's the sun watching over us because we're special." I hugged him tightly, inhaling the scent of crayons and playground dust. "We are special, aren't we?" That night, after Parker was asleep, I sat at our tiny kitchen table with bills spread before me. The rent increase notice glared up at me, alongside the past due childcare payment and the estimate for Parker's dental work. I'd been putting off the dentist, hoping the toothache he complained about was just a loose baby tooth, but the school nurse had called insisting he needed to be seen. I opened my laptop, determined to find a solution. Maybe a remote position I could work during evenings? A weekend job where I could bring Parker along? As I scrolled through job listings, an ad caught my eye: local business competition, $50,000 prize. It was being sponsored by a regional business development association, looking for innovative small business ideas that could revitalize the community. The deadline was in 3 weeks. I stared at the screen, an idea forming. Before Parker was born, I'd dreamed of opening a specialized bookstore cafe, one that offered childcare while parents browsed or worked. A place I would have desperately needed these past 5 years. "That's ridiculous," I muttered to myself. "You don't have time to enter a business competition." But as I closed my laptop and gathered the bills into a neat stack, the idea refused to fade. The next few weeks passed in a blur of kindergarten adjustments, work shifts, and late nights researching business plans. Parker caught a cold, missing 3 days of school that I cobbled together with sick days, favors from neighbors, and one desperate day of bringing him to the coffee shop where he colored quietly in the back room. Through it all, the business competition deadline loomed. I worked on my proposal during lunch breaks and after Parker went to bed, often falling asleep with my laptop still open beside me. The concept evolved as I worked: a combination bookstore, cafe, and co-working space with drop-in childcare. A place where parents, especially single parents, could work, socialize, or simply breathe while their children were safely entertained nearby. I called it Chapter 1, symbolizing new beginnings. 2 days before the deadline, I was putting the finishing touches on my proposal when my phone rang. It was Parker's teacher. "Ms. Reynolds? We need you to come in for a conference tomorrow morning." My stomach dropped. "Is Parker okay?" "He's fine, but there's been an incident we need to discuss." I rearranged my work schedule, losing hours I couldn't afford to lose, and arrived at the school the next morning with dread pooling in my stomach. Parker's teacher, Mrs. Chen, sat across from me with the school counselor beside her. Parker was in the library, they explained, while we talked. "Parker got into an altercation with another student yesterday," Mrs. Chen began. "An altercation?" "He's 5, I said, my defensive instincts flaring. "He pushed Tommy during recess after Tommy said something about Parker not having a dad." I closed my eyes briefly. "I see. We take physical aggression very seriously," the counselor interjected. "But we also understand that Parker was responding to hurtful comments. We've spoken with Tommy and his parents. Parker has been struggling to connect with some of the other children," Mrs. Chen continued gently. "He talks a lot about being different, about not having what he calls a complete family. I wondered if perhaps he might benefit from our school's family counseling program." The suggestion, though kindly meant, stung like an accusation. Was I failing my son so obviously that his teacher could see it after just a few weeks? "We'll consider it," I said stiffly. "But Parker and I talk very openly about our family. He knows he's loved." "Of course," Mrs. Chen nodded. It's just that children sometimes need additional support when they're processing complex emotions. Especially when they're feeling different from their peers. I left the meeting with a brochure for the counseling program and a heaviness in my chest that followed me through the rest of the day. That night, I sat with Parker on our small balcony, looking at the stars while he sipped hot chocolate. "Am I in trouble about Tommy?" he asked suddenly. "No, honey. But we don't solve problems by pushing." He said I was broken because I don't have a dad. Like a toy with missing pieces. His voice was small, his eyes fixed on the marshmallows melting in his mug. I pulled him close, fighting the urge to cry. "You are not broken, Parker. You are perfectly whole, exactly as you are. Families come in all different combinations, remember? But why did my dad not want us?" The question I'd been dreading since the day he was born. I'd prepared answers, practiced them in the mirror, but now they all seemed inadequate. "Sometimes people aren't ready to be parents," I said carefully. "It wasn't about you, you weren't even born yet. It was about him, and his choices. But I wanted you more than anything in the whole world." "More than a T-Rex wants meat?" he asked, our familiar refrain. Way more," I assured him. That night, after he was asleep, I stayed up until 3 a.m. finishing my business proposal, fueled by a new determination. I wasn't just doing this for financial stability anymore. I was doing it to create a world where Parker wouldn't feel different or less than. Where single parents like me could find community instead of judgment. I submitted the proposal minutes before the deadline, then collapsed into bed for a few hours of sleep before my morning shift. Weeks passed with no word from the competition organizers. I assumed my entry had been discarded and tried to focus on more immediate concerns, like the fact that Parker had outgrown all his winter clothes, or that my car was making an ominous clicking sound. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon as I was serving lattes to a group of business executives who barely looked up from their phones, my own phone buzzed with an email notification. "Congratulations! Your Chapter 1 proposal has been selected as a finalist in the local business competition." I nearly dropped the pitcher of milk I was holding. As a finalist, I would need to present my business plan to a panel of judges in 2 weeks. The email included a list of what to prepare, including financial projections, market analysis, and a 5-minute pitch. That night, I called my mother to share the news. "That's wonderful, honey," she exclaimed. "But are you sure you have time for this? With Parker and your jobs?" It was a valid question. The presentation was scheduled during my coffee shop shift, and I'd need to prepare extensively, time I didn't have. "I'll make it work," I said, more confidently than I felt. This could change everything for us. The next 2 weeks were a marathon of preparation. I traded shifts with coworkers, stayed up late researching, and practiced my pitch while cooking dinner, folding laundry, and driving to work. Parker helped me create a colorful model of what Chapter 1 would look like, using his building blocks and action figures as stand-ins for furniture and people. The night before the presentation, disaster struck. Parker's babysitter canceled last minute, her own child was sick. I called everyone I could think of, but at such short notice, no one was available during the exact hours I needed. I sat on the bathroom floor, phone in hand, fighting back tears of frustration. After coming so far, I might have to forfeit my spot because I had no one to watch my child. The irony wasn't lost on me, this was exactly the problem Chapter 1 was designed to solve. In desperation, I called Mrs. Chen, Parker's teacher. "I know this is completely unprofessional and probably against all kinds of rules," I said after explaining my situation, "but is there any way Parker could stay in the after-school program tomorrow even though I can't pick him up at the normal time? The presentation should be done by 6, and I could be there by 6:30. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "The program officially ends at 5, she said slowly. "But I could stay with him myself until you arrive. He could help me set up for the science fair." The kindness of this near stranger brought fresh tears to my eyes. I can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask. I offered, she said firmly. Parker is a wonderful boy, Ms. Reynolds. And what you're trying to do with this business, creating a space for families like yours, it matters. Let me help. The next day, I arrived at the business center in my one good blazer, the one I saved for job interviews and parent-teacher conferences. My hands trembled slightly as I set up my presentation materials, including Parker's colorful model, which had earned a special place in my visual aids. The judges, 5 local business leaders, filed in with serious expressions and notepads. I recognized one of them as a regular at the coffee shop, though he showed no sign of recognizing me without my apron. As I began my presentation, my nervousness faded, replaced by the passion that had driven me to create this proposal in the first place. I spoke about the challenges facing working parents, especially single parents. I shared statistics about the motherhood penalty in the workforce and the lack of affordable, flexible childcare options. Chapter 1 isn't just a business, I explained, gesturing to the model Parker had helped create. It's a community solution. A place where parents can work, connect, and breathe while their children are safely engaged just steps away. Where a single mother can have a professional meeting without worrying about childcare falling through. Where no parent has to choose between their career and being present for their child. I didn't mention that I was describing my own daily reality, but I think they could hear it in my voice. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before the questions began. They were tough but fair, about financial sustainability, staffing, liability insurance, competitive analysis. I answered each one clearly, drawing on the extensive research I'd done. The final question came from the coffee shop regular. This is clearly a passion project for you, he said. But passion doesn't guarantee success. Why should we believe you can make this work? I took a deep breath. Because I've been living the problem this business solves for 5 years. I know exactly what parents like me need because I've needed it every single day. I've worked 2 jobs while raising my son alone, constantly juggling, constantly compromising, constantly being told that I can't have both a career and be a good mother. Chapter 1 exists to challenge that false choice. I glanced at my watch. In fact, right now, my son's kindergarten teacher is keeping him late as a personal favor so I could be here. That's the reality for parents without adequate support systems. We rely on the kindness of others, and sometimes it's not enough. The judges exchanged glances I couldn't interpret. I was thanked for my time and told they would announce their decision within a week. I rushed to Parker's school, arriving at 6:25 to find him happily helping Mrs. Chen arrange science project display boards. "Mommy. Did you win?" he asked, running to hug me. "We don't know yet, buddy. But I did my very best." Mrs. Chen smiled. "He's been telling me all about the special store you're going to build where mommies can work and kids can play. It's going to have books and dinosaurs," Parker informed her seriously. "And no one will say families are broken there." The week that followed was agonizing. I jumped every time my phone buzzed, hoping for news. Parker asked daily if we'd won, his excitement both heartwarming and nerve-wracking. I hadn't fully explained that winning was a long shot. 7 days after my presentation, as I was wiping down tables at the coffee shop, the bell above the door jingled. I looked up to see 3 of the judges from the competition walking in, including the regular customer. My heart leapt into my throat. They approached the counter, where my coworker was taking orders. "Is Ellie Reynolds working today?" one of them asked. My coworker pointed to where I stood, frozen, rag in hand. They walked over, and I straightened, trying to look professional despite my coffee-stained apron. "Ms. Reynolds," the lead judge said, extending his hand. "We wanted to deliver this in person." He handed me an envelope. With trembling fingers, I opened it to find a check for $50,000 made out to Chapter 1, LLC, and a letter confirming I had won the grand prize.